Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking about episode 18 of season 1 of Arrow called Salvation. And this is another episode where a lot of stuff really starts coming together. Most notably, the whole thing with the weird symbol for the undertaking being revealed to be a map of the Starling City subway. Now, it's really funny that this happened because when we got another look at the symbol at the very beginning of this episode, I couldn't help but think, you know what? That kind of looks like a map. And, sure enough, by the end of the episode, it turned out to be right. Honestly, I'm a little surprised at myself for not having figured that out sooner. It's one of those things. It seems extremely obvious in retrospect, but still, I'll give the writers points for that. The way they handled it, the reveal seems very natural. I saw that, I started to suspect, and by the end of the episode, my suspicions had been confirmed. That's pretty good writing. And as I said, if you look back at what has come before, all the clues were there. We just needed to put it together. So some real points to the writing team on that. And I also will say that I do think it is pretty cool that they are incorporating the idea of abandoned subway stations. For some reason, I find things like that to be really, really cool. If you know anything about like urban exploration or just sort of read about abandoned places, there are for real, like in major cities across the world, like just miles and miles of just completely and utterly abandoned subway lines and subway stations, stuff that has really mostly been cut off from the world for decades. It's actually pretty awesome. But anyway, so let's kind of get right into what's going on here in the episode. I like how in this episode everybody kind of gets their own little moments. Now, obviously, the main stuff is focused mostly on what's going on with Oliver and the subplot with what's going on with Thea and Roy. But everybody, like I said, has a little moment to shine or to do something really interesting with their character. For example, Dig, at the very beginning, after Ollie fails to take down Nickel, he's ready to go back out there, and Dig says, no, go home, go do something, and Oliver's kind of trying to blow him off, and then Dig just sort of tells him, I'm not asking, and drags Oliver off to Big Belly Burger. Carly, I guess, must have been off that night. Okay, I think it's okay that we let that subplot rest at least for a while longer. There's bigger fish to fry, and given what Dig has recently found out about Deadshot, I think he's got bigger things than dating on his mind. But again, I like how this really does show that what Oliver and Dig have is indeed a partnership. Dig went out there and just flat out vetoed Oliver, which is really cool because honestly, Oliver needs somebody who can do that to him, especially now. And that's actually a little bit of a theme this episode, is that Oliver needs people. But we'll come back to that in a minute. I do briefly want to talk about what's going on with Felicity. I like how she's still integrating into Team Arrow. At the very beginning, Oliver asks her, "Are you 100% sure that you're on board with him going out and taking down Nickel?" Now, Felicity had even said that she was only going to be around until until they were able to find Walter. But she knows that if Oliver goes out there, there's a pretty good chance that some serious violence is going to happen. Now, she has every reason to think that Oliver's just not going to flat out execute this guy, but Ollie's certainly going to go out there and scare the living hell out of him. And she even says she is 100% okay with this. This is showing that Felicity's hardening up a little bit. Then again, after what's happened with Dodger and the training that she's been getting from Dig, well, certainly not what Ollie went through on the island, but she's getting there. And here we see another little step in her emotional journey of becoming a more integrated part of the group. After the second innocent person dies, Felicity's really down on herself. She's even says, if I was dating somebody, I'd want to break it off. She really is, as they put it in this episode, that Oliver is still on the island. Well, Felicity's kind of, in a way, going to her own little island, cutting herself off. And I like how Oliver, at the end of the episode, sort of steps in there and says to her, if you need somebody to talk to, you can talk to me. He's telling Felicity that she shouldn't do what he's doing, that she shouldn't cut herself off from people. And, I'm sure that, the people who really dig the whole Oliver Felicity thing, they were probably squeeing over some of the fun stuff that we got to see this episode. And, I don't really do the shipper thing, but I have to say, I really do like these two characters interacting. They do have a really nice chemistry. And Felicity really does bring out, in many ways, the better side of Oliver in ways that Dig can't. So let's see here. Yeah, I think that covers everything that I had to say about Felicity and Dig. So let's move on. Yeah, let's go through the smaller characters, and then we'll kind of build our way up. Let's go and see what's happening with the Lance family. Now, first of all, Arrow writers, once again, I must complain about your knowledge of geography. The vast majority of this episode talks about that the quote-unquote Sarah sighting happened in China, but at one point, I think it was Diana was talking about how she got off the phone with someone in Phuket. Okay, folks, Phuket is in Thailand. Thailand is in Southeast Asia. China is in East Asia. Okay? I know. I've said before that, I was a geography. One of my majors in college was geography. I do have a pretty good knowledge of where countries and things like that are in this here big old world of ours. So stuff like this just really irritates the hell out of me. Now, granted, this isn't quite as gratuitous as the North China Sea, a body of water that does not actually exist. Yes, I am still on about that. But yeah, and then there's the whole thing about focusing all this on, it's a girl who happens to look like Sarah wearing a Starling City Rockets cap. Okay, look, folks, I've been to China, and they're not exactly lacking for American tourists there, or Western tourists, I should say. Okay? They're not that uncommon, especially if you're in the cities. Now, it's never made exactly clear where that picture was taken. Sorry. It is made clear where it was taken in this episode by the person who was in the shot, but they never really said very clearly up until that moment where it was. But anyway. Okay, I also have to say that it seems absolutely ridiculous the amount of information that they were able to cull from a picture of some random person taken by a tourist. And what in the world is going on with this database thing that apparently they have in China, where you can identify some random person who just happens to be in a photograph somewhere? I mean, I know the Chinese government is super paranoid and stuff. Like I said, I've been there. I spent 3 weeks there in college, and well, I got to see some of the more interesting things, some interesting things in regards to the Chinese government, including having a minder from the Chinese Communist Party follow my college group around for a pretty good chunk of that trip. But that's a very, very long story. But anyway, okay, I suppose it's not entirely out of reason that maybe the Chinese government could do this. But why in the name of all that's holy would they share this information with some random Americans? I mean, Laurel sort of makes a vague excuse that she has a friend from law school who works at the Chinese embassy. But again, the Chinese embassy is an extension of the Chinese government, and I just really can't see the Chinese government doing this sort of thing. But honestly, overall, this subplot is not terribly strong. Now, it is interesting to kind of get a better idea of what kind of family Laurel comes from, and you certainly can't fault, having River Song and Harry Dresden as parents, essentially. I mean, that's pretty badass casting any way you slice it. Even if her parents' American accents are, yeah. But anyway, this all sort of builds into the idea that Diana simply can't accept the fact that Sarah's dead. And, hey, how likely is it that Sarah was in a shipwreck and through all of that still somehow managed to hold on to a freaking hat? But anyway, it all sort of builds that Laurel and Quentin have accepted Sarah's death. Not easily, but they have accepted, while Diana is still out there chasing every little ridiculous thread there is out of a misplaced sense of guilt. And this is a very sad note, of course. It really is just something that really compounds the tragedy. So of course the whole Sarah thought she was in love with Oliver also kind of compounds the tragedy as well. But well, yeah, that's about all I have to say for that. I did like how, as Diana said, now she says that she's going to Central City and that, back in a flash. I think that last one was laying it on a little bit too thick, and if you don't understand what I'm talking about, in the comics, the Central City is traditionally the home of the Barry Allen incarnation of the Flash. Still, I really do love when they name-check various cities from around the DC universe. I'm still really hoping we get a mention of Opal City at one point, because that's the home of Starman, and Starman was one of my absolute favorite comic books of the 90s. It was just a gorgeous, wonderful read. But anyway, moving on. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Okay, let's kind of let me see here. Oh yeah. All right, so let's talk about Thea and Roy and what's going on there. First of all, I gotta say, I think this episode, their relationship has moved forward at a pretty interesting clip. I mean, last time around, Thea was laying a kiss on Roy just to sort of distract him. I think they're sort of at the level of two teenagers who have kind of realized that there's a bit of an attraction to each other. Now Thea's over at this guy's house making out. Now, granted, Thea doesn't seem like the sort of person who lets any moss grow on her in regards to her choices, so I suppose this isn't really out of character, it's just a little bit jarring. But here we sort of are really starting to get into a little bit better read of just who Roy is under all the tough guy BS. And he does lay it out for Thea pretty well, that he owes people. He has done things that he just can't walk away from, and that he has to do, that he basically has resigned himself to, this is what I have to do in order to survive. This is what I have to do if I want to see 21 years old. And sadly, this is not an uncommon attitude among young guys from really tough neighborhoods. But as the Savior even points out to Roy, I came from the Glades. I didn't become a criminal. And, there really is no easy answer to this. But at the end of the day, we all are responsible for our choices. I'm not a believer in the idea that that I had no choice. I don't believe in that. And there was a French philosopher by the name of Sartre who put it really, really well. And basically he says, you always have a choice. You just may not always have a choice that you like. An example you have is if somebody comes along, you're walking down the street, they point a gun at you and say, give me your wallet or I'll kill you. Well, most people would say, well, in that situation, I would have no choice but to give him his wallet. Well, technically you do. You can choose not to give him your wallet and have the guy shoot you. Again, you have a choice, you just don't have a choice you like. And I suppose that might seem more than a little heartless, considering the context of what we're talking about here. And I won't deny that this is a very stoic stance to take, but what can I say? That's just kind of how I see life. We all find ourselves in hard situations sometimes, situations where we don't have choices we like, but we all have to live with the choices we make, and we have to live with the fact that the choices we make are part of what makes us who we are. And look at Roy in this episode. When the Savior asks him, why should you live? Roy even says, I shouldn't, I'm garbage. Roy knows that he is making bad choices, that he is choosing to do bad things, and he knows that if he continues to make these choices, which he probably will, and even he knows that, he's really got a chance of turning into somebody who really would deserve to get one of Oliver's arrows. But, as Oliver points out, Roy deserves a second chance. There is more to Roy than what we see on the surface. And as we've seen, when he went out there to save Thea, to basically make sure she got home safe and saved her, that there is good in Roy, that he is capable of caring about more than himself, and that he is capable of learning from his mistakes. He empties the bullets out of his gun to appease Thea, and doubtlessly because he probably genuinely doesn't want to hurt anybody. It's interesting that his thing that he and his friends were going to do was go and knock over a liquor store. And the Savior is right when pointing out that Roy really was turning into the sort of person who killed his wife, who was killed when a bodega was robbed. So let's talk about the Savior here. To the best of my knowledge, he's not a character from the comics. I do recall vaguely there being a character who went by the name of the Savior in the Superman comics, but he was some sort of superpowered serial killer. And that doesn't really seem to be in keeping with what we see here, so I'm just going to chalk the name up to being a coincidence. Now, the Savior here does raise some interesting points. He simply asks Ollie, basically says, again, like with Huntress, how are you different? And Ollie basically chalks this up to the fact that he has some degree of restraint, which is true. But let's not forget, Ollie was not there when he started. Ollie killed a whole bunch of henchmen and possibly just security guys who really who may have had no idea at all that the guy that they were protecting was a criminal. Now, granted, Ollie has changed. He does not immediately go to lethal force. In fact, he desperately tries to talk the Savior down, to reason with him. And it is only when that guy is about to whip around and shoot Roy, does Ollie choose to kill him. Ollie chooses to kill him. He had a choice, just not a choice that he liked. Kill the Savior, let Roy die. He had a choice, just not one he liked. Smart guy, Sartier. And don't get him on my case about the pronunciation. Sartier is considered an acceptable pronunciation of the guy's name for native English speakers such as myself. Anyway, and of course the Savior also mentions that he's alone. Now here, Ollie is seeing, in some ways, a shade of what he could possibly become. Savior's just this broken, empty man who has no one. The only thing he really has is a list of people he thinks deserve his particular brand of justice. Of course, this all leads us into the scene at the end with Oliver and Laurel. That actually surprisingly nice music that was playing there, where Oliver says that he doesn't want to be on the island anymore, that he doesn't want to be alone. And he and Laurel have actually been pretty distant for quite a while, for understandable reasons. But just because she's dating Tommy, that doesn't mean that they can't continue to be friends. And remember, they were friends long before things got romantic between them. So I like that Oliver is taking the time to go there and reconnect with Laurel as a friend. I think that's something that he's really needed. Because, honestly, I think Laurel is a good influence on Ollie. Hey, speaking of Ollie, let's go and talk about him. And Ollie does something this episode that is just mind-bendingly stupid. Okay, so when Ollie's heading off to go and rescue the district attorney, incidentally, the Savior you should note that the Savior did kill a guy whose only job was he was overworked. The slumlord had genuinely done stuff that caused people to die. This was just some overworked public servant who was really genuinely trying to do the best he could. And keep in mind, he has very good reasons for not wanting to prosecute a case unless he's sure he can win. It's a little thing called double jeopardy. And if you're not familiar with that particular aspect of the American legal system, it basically says if you put someone on trial, they're found not guilty, even if the next day, rock solid, 100% undeniable proof turns up that they really did it, you can't put them on trial again. That is an absolute spelled out in our laws. So it makes perfect sense that he would not do that unless he was really sure he could win. But anyway, okay, back to Ollie. He's going to out there to try and rescue the district attorney guy. And he races off on the motorcycle, and when he gets to the building where he thinks the guy's being held, he takes the motorcycle helmet off. Now keep in mind, this means that Oliver Queen has his face clearly visible, a man who is well known in Starling City, and is going around there kicking in doors on a building to rescue people, where his face is almost certainly going to be seen. And oh yeah, there's a camera rolling that's broadcasting the whole scene to the entire, half the city. I mean, Ollie, just keep your freaking motorcycle helmet on. You did it when you fought the Dodger. How freaking stupid are you? Now, granted, it's not quite as dramatic if we don't see good old Steve Amell's face while all this is going on, but still, come on! Delicious water. Okay. So anyway, let me see here. Yes, it's now time for talking about what's going on in the island. Okay, first of all, Eddie Friars continues to be a complete and utter bastard. And I gotta say, I love it. I really just love hating this guy. He's such a jerk. Now we get to see Yao Fei again, which is always a plus. And here, things go south, but now Ollie and Slade have Shadow on their side. And, well, odds are Yao Fei has once again been recaptured by Friars, but I guess we'll see. So now we have Shadow on Team Proto-Arrow. And, well, that's really basically what happens this episode. Although I do like how, Slade kind of points out that Oliver has some scruples. And that is the big thing that defines him from Oliver. Now, when you think about how we ultimately ended up seeing the Deathstroke mask stuck up on that pole with an arrow through the eye, maybe we see the first seeds of what's ultimately going to be a possible divide between good old Slade and Ollie. If you haven't heard that Manu Bennett, who plays Slade, he's been made a regular for next season. I don't really consider that sort of thing a spoiler. So, kind of makes you wonder, who's going to be the big bad of next season? Because I'm thinking Malcolm Merlin might not make it out of this one alive. But we'll talk a little bit more about Malcolm later. Later is now, because that's really all I had to say about Shadow. I've mentioned how she's an important character in the comics, but apart from hooking up with Ollie and Slade, not really a whole lot going on with her. So, man, that fellow that plays Frank, who, as I have said in my previous review, was also the crooked accountant in the Dark Knight Returns, the Dark Knight. Sorry, the Dark Knight Returns is something completely different. Wow, he just does not have good luck surviving in DC properties, does he? And of course, it was really blatantly telegraphed that Moira was going to set him up as the fall guy when he said, oh yeah, I transferred the money from overseas and blah blah blah. It's like, well, obviously Moira is going to frame this guy. Man, you'd think that a guy who was a part of such a massive criminal conspiracy for so long would have seen this coming. But yeah, I guess Moira's really not that worried that China White is going to rat her out for some inexplicable reason. And now we get to see Moira meets the Dark Archer, or Black Arrow, or whatever you want to call him. And I like how she literally pleads with the guy not to kill Frank's daughter. It shows that there is that Moira will make, even as she says, she'll do anything for her family, but that she's not so far gone morally that she wants people who are innocent to die. I mean, it's fairly safe to say that not wanting innocent people to die is probably part of the reason why she wants out of the undertaking. But this episode doesn't let poor Moira off the hook that easily, because at the end she's literally sitting there looking at the blood on her hands. Not exactly subtle, but well, sometimes subtlety is overrated. And oh yeah, one other thing that I want to talk about. Does anyone else besides me think it's just absolutely ridiculous that a TV station is going to sit there and broadcast what really could turn into a murder at any second? I mean, okay, maybe the first time that happened, but there's a reason why news shows tend to show situations that could potentially go really bad on a delay. I mean, I remember seeing on TV one time, like Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, like mooned the audience at the MTV Awards or something. And even though MTV managed to cut away in time, like they still got fined. And there's all the other times that sometimes a celebrity swears during a live broadcast, and even if it's on a delay, it accidentally slips through. Or the whole Janet Jackson nipple thing at the Super Bowl. That happens here it happens in the States. The FCC goes out on the frickin' warpath and skins whoever they can get their hands on alive. So seriously, I cannot imagine these TV stations being this massively irresponsible. It's just ridiculous. Not to mention all the viewers who are going to be like, what the hell? You showed someone being murdered on live TV. Twice! In the span of about a day. I mean, how are there not going to be an army of protesters outside these TV stations raising absolute hell? I mean, granted, maybe this happens and we just don't see it, but how dumb are the... Oh, man. And with that, folks, we're going to call it here. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe, and of course you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. Until next time, take care and have a good one.